Welcome to Café Grit. Today we're going to talk about lessons from childhood that shape who we are today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my mom. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. She was a lovely woman in many ways, in most ways. All right, let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Café Grit, the place to go when you've got a hankering for purpose, a taste for fulfillment, and you're tired of living the rat race. I'm your host, Beth Anne Campbell. Thanks for stopping by. Café Grit is now open for service. Hey everybody, welcome to Café Grit, the show about grit, not the kind that you eat. You can eat grits, and they're very, very tasty. But no, this is not about that kind of grit. It's about finding your voice, speaking out, finding your purpose, prioritizing yourself, having the courage to prioritize yourself, all kinds of things related to true grit. And I am your host, Beth Anne Campbell, wearing a hat today. If you can't see me, I'm wearing a hat because it is colder than blazes outside today. Not blazes, because then it wouldn't be really cold, but it's like snow miser. Like it's Mr. 10 below snow miser cold. No, it's not quite 10 below, but it's very cold. Colder than I like. My tolerance for cold has dropped significantly in the last year, probably because I've dropped some weight. I'm more active, and when I look outside and it's super cold or it's snowing or the roads are bad, ugh, it gets me all riled up. But anyway, I hope that you all are having a great, fabulous new year as we are recording this just after the new year, and that you're doing great and weathering all of the crap that is still hitting us with the pandemic. You know what? I hate to say it, new normal. Nope, I didn't say it. Shut up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about weather, and we're not here to talk about the fucking pandemic. We're going to talk about my mom. Now, if you've been listening to some of the recent episodes from the end of last year, you know that I've talking about my mom. So why am I talking about my mom? Why should you all care about my mom? Well, first of all, my mom has passed away. So you can, if you don't care about my mom, you can say or think anything you want about her. She's not around. But like many of you, I had a complicated relationship with my mom. And many of you have complicated relationships with one or more of your parents. And as I get older, I try to seek to understand more about myself and why I operate the way I do, why I do the things I do, why I'm passionate about the things that I am. And part of that is going back to what shaped us. And I've been doing a little bit of that in my health coaching, which I'll talk about at the end of the show. But that's kind of, it's been something that I've been thinking about over the past year, really trying to understand how I was brought up and the people around me, in this case, my mother, who, one of the closest people that you will have in your life is a parent, most of us. So, trying to understand myself and what drives me and how I am. And in doing so, I'm looking back at some of the ways that I interacted with my mom. And really, it's helped me kind of understand a lot about her in a different way, and really realizing in some ways what a badass that she was, but also how her interactions and the things that she taught me led me to where I am today. So, and so why does that affect you? Why would you care about that? Well, if maybe you're one of those people that had one of those complicated relationships, maybe stories about my mom, me telling you about my experience will help you to, or encourage you to look back and help you understand where you came from and what drives you and why you have your passions. So that's why I'm talking about this. So a little bit about my mom. She was born in 1943 in Michigan. And I'm not going to, believe me, trust me, I'm not going to give you the whole history of my mom. So don't worry. But so by the time she was 20, so just to understand a little bit of the background here. So by the time she was 26, she had 4 kids under the age of 5. And 1 week before the youngest of those four were born, she lost her husband, my dad, in an unexpected accident. I, I can only imagine. When I was in my 20s, I remember thinking about this and thinking, I I don't know how I could deal with having one kid at 26, let alone four. Now, I was actually I was a nanny at the time, so I did actually have two kids, but it's different when you're a nanny. I mean, you're kind of like a parent, but ultimately, um, you know, you can pick up and leave anytime you want. So for 6 years after my dad died, she was a single woman, and she dated, she worked, she raised kids. I wasn't, I'm not going to say that I had insights into the inner workings of my mom at that time. I was very, very young. I was only not even three. Yeah, I was like 2.5, I think, when my dad passed away. So I don't really remember much of that time. But for the next 6 years, I do remember some of that stuff. She was a single woman. She dated. She worked. She had a job as a secretary at a local company. She raised her kids. And then eventually she remarried. She had two more kids with my stepdad, plus he brought in a son. So we had the whole Brady Bunch thing going on. And then later, in the 80s and 90s, she became a photographer. It was something that she had a passion for, and worked for a photography studio, then eventually owned her own photography business. And ultimately, she passed away in 2008 at the age of 63 from uterine cancer. So in me trying to figure out who I am or why I am the way I am, where I came from, how my parents and people in my life influenced that from an early age, I really do have to look at my mom. My dad was not around. And honestly, male role models, I didn't have a whole lot of great ones, but I had a female role model, and that was really my mom. I had grandmothers too, but I'm not going to say that either one of them were any kind of a great role model. They were not, for different reasons. But so my mom was really my role model, and probably the person who had the most influence on me around those times. We didn't live in the city, so we didn't have a lot of interaction with a ton of people like you might in a more urban setting. We were out in the country. So basically I saw my siblings and my mom until she remarried, and then it was my stepdad. So my mom I will describe her in many ways, although she was a very vibrant and colorful person, but I always think of her as, in those days at least, as very neutral. She was not the most affectionate person in the world. I mean, it's not like I felt like remember that I was showered with any kind of affection, but she was not unaffectionate. She was just sort of neutrally affectionate. She was not the most communicative, not like I see like today, like if I look at my sisters and the younger women, like my nieces, a couple of my nieces have had kids, and I see the difference in how they communicate with their kids, even how my sisters communicated with their kids, and they're much more open and transparent about and sharing everything and being very open. My mom was not open like that, not with me. I think she opened up a little bit later. Now, my mother was very social and she was very talkative. It's not like that she was an introvert, but it's just that when we're talking about communication things with your kids, she was very traditional. I would say, as somebody who grew up in the 50s and 60s, it's what you would probably expect. For as an example, the talk that my mom and I had about puberty, women stuff, was, do you know what menstruation is? And my answer was, yes, we had a movie about it at school. Okay, good. That was it. That was the whole talk, right? Now, meanwhile, when my youngest sister, so there are three girls in the family, and she's almost 10 years younger than me. When she got to that point, it was much more, we were much more open, and it was much more of a comfortable topic. But for me, the oldest girl, no. So that kind of thing is what I'm talking about, her not being very communicative about. So she's kind of neutral. Same with politics and religion. She was just, she was very, very neutral. She neither encouraged nor discouraged us from any religious pursuits. We didn't go to church. My grandmother was a devout, I'll say in quotes, devout Lutheran. Lutheran is really our family background on the maternal side. And I remember we would have a pastor that would come out from the Lutheran church periodically, come drive out to the country and come visit my mom and try to convince her to go to church. And she would sit down, she would have a cup of coffee or whatever with him. But we never went. It was never, but yet when I decided I wanted to go to church when I was 16, mostly because I had a crush on somebody in the youth group, she was perfectly fine with that. My late brother was Muslim and converted to Islam in the early 90s, and she was cool with that. I dabbled in Wicca for a while. She was cool with that. I ultimately settled on being pretty just agnostic, probably atheist. She's okay with that. So she's just kind of very neutral. She was supportive, but in sort of a very bland sort of way. There was never any like real passion for or against anything. Pretty neutral as a parent, although I did perceive that she favored my brothers, but I understood why. In my adult life, I understood that. When my dad passed away, my brothers lost their role model. I had mine. I had my role models. I had my mom. Like I said, my grandmothers really weren't great, but my mom's best friend and her, I don't know, second or third cousin, and who also had children that were close to my age, girls. So we were very close. I had her as a role model. I had my mom. So I understand that maybe, when your sons lose their dad, there's maybe a little bit of extra. It was probably just a perception anyway. But again, just sort of neutral, right? One of the things that really I've been thinking about lately about how my mom interacted with me and maybe helped shape to who I am today is how she made me take responsibility for things. So we are now in an age of helicopter parenting, and it is perfectly valid and understandable that we want to protect our kids. And by the way, this was true back then too. I remember a couple of instances in school where students got like a little bit lower of a grade than they thought that they should get, and the parents, came in all, huffy. So that kind of helicopter parenting did exist back then when I was a kid. But certainly in this day and age, we're uber safe. We want to, take care of our kids. There's a lot of protecting of them when they have to do difficult things. And I don't know that that's always a good thing. At the time, my mother forcing me to take responsibility for my decisions was not something that I appreciated, but as an adult, I so appreciated. So whenever I would make a decision to do something or not do something, she made me take ownership of it. And that included if I had to do the dirty deeds, like if I had to ask permission from someone to do something, or if I had to tell someone no, or that I didn't want to do something anymore. And I absolutely hated this as a kid, but I totally get it now. It really does help me understand a lot of who I am. So as an example, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I wanted to take ballet lessons. So she signed me up for ballet. I took ballet for a year or two, and then I decided, as will be a very common theme in my life, I get very tired of things early. She would say it was because I'm an Aquarius. I don't know if that's true or not. But whatever, I got tired of it, frustrated with it, whatever. I didn't want to do it anymore. And she said that was fine. No, there was no anger. There was no, you said you wanted to do it. It was just, that's your decision. But you have to call I think her name was Little, Miss Little, Lana Little, lovely lady. And you have to tell her. Now, for a 7-year-old to have to call somebody and say, I'm not going to take your lessons anymore, I just remember being horrified that I would have to do this, take responsibility for this. But I had to. If I wanted to quit, I had to take responsibility and do the deed. So I called her and I quit. Also another common theme in my life, quitting stuff. So a few years later, so that now I'm, 9 or 10, and I decided I wanted to take piano lessons. I had taken piano when I was a very, very young with one of our family cousins, Marguerite. But I believe Marguerite had passed away. She was very old at the time. But I decided for whatever reason, I wanted to take piano lessons. So I knew of a woman, and I had to contact her and let her know that I was interested. And my mother was, again, very supportive. And I had to pay for this also with my allowance, by the way, another area where she made me take responsibility. But then again, after about a year, maybe a little more than a year, I didn't want to take piano anymore. I don't know why. I think I was probably frustrated, maybe bored, maybe um maybe that neutrality that I experienced, that was maybe a downside of it, is I didn't really get the encouragement. And that is a thing that I wish I had gotten. But as far as making the decision that I just didn't want to take piano lessons anymore, again, my mother was very supportive. You can do what you want to do, but you have to call Ms. I can't remember her name, Ms. Piano Teacher, and let her know. And again, that is a kind of a horrifying thing to do when you're basically calling someone and telling them I just, I have empathy. Even at that young age, I recognized that I was basically telling her I didn't really enjoy her class and I didn't want to take it anymore. So again, years later, I'm in band, a lot of stuff involving the arts here, and I was playing oboe, which not a lot of people play. It's a little bit of a complicated instrument, and I wanted to. One day I went and saw the high school band, jazz band, in a concert, and I thought, I don't want to play the oboe anymore. I want to play the sax. And again, my mother was perfectly supportive, even though she had just spent $300 on an oboe a couple of years before. But I had to do the deed. I had to have that conversation with the band teacher. So this is a very common theme in my world when I was a kid, and I for many, many years I almost resented it. I almost resented, why didn't she take that step in for me and do that for me. I was just a child, but she wasn't asking me to commit a crime. She was just simply asking me, forcing me, directing me, encouraging me in her neutral way to take responsibility, that choices are okay, but we have to be accountable for those choices. And I think that's what a lot of people, and what frustrates me a lot about some of the stuff that I hear in the news and in social media today, where people think that they can just do whatever they want, say whatever they want. And because we have free speech, that means that they're, free and clear. And that's not true. That's not what free speech is. Free speech is that there are consequences for your actions, right? For your words. That just means the government can't put you in jail for it. But it doesn't mean that what we do and what we say don't have consequences. So, her encouraging me, or really making me take responsibility for my choices, be accountable, take ownership, do those deeds, like calling teachers and having conversations with them about, I don't really want to do this anymore, owning it when I fuck up. That is a valuable lesson that I learned from my mom. And I know how important it is. I did an episode, season 1, episode 15. This one time I got in trouble again, where I talked about taking responsibility for my actions when I snapped at somebody when I was a very young whippersnapper working at a company, and how I basically spared myself by taking accountability and apologizing of my own volition. So this all this stuff with my mom is just the stuff that I'm thinking about, and there are a lot of other things from my childhood that I'm really evaluating. So some of the ways that my mom really was a badass in it, but I thought she was just kind of being a bitch. So I'm gonna maybe explore that in some future episodes. Um, I mentioned up front that I was also kind of thinking about these things through my health coaching. So I've mentioned that I am working with this awesome coach, Jillian Davies. She's helping me with my fitness, 70 pounds lost as of last weekend. Boom. But more importantly, getting in the head of Beth. And really, the last, I don't know, month or so, we've been delving into some childhood stuff about my relationship with food. And I'm going to talk about that in an episode too, because that's kind of a fun one, and some interesting things my parents did with food that, not surprisingly, have probably shaped how I deal with food today. So parental influence is really, really can be very profound in ways that we don't even think about it. So I encourage all of you really to go back as you get older and more self-aware and try to understand yourself and why you are the way you are. Look at those things that you remember from your childhood that really resonate with you, that cause you to be uncomfortable thinking about, or that you resent your parents for, or that you bring up some sort of an emotion that over and over again that you've not been able to let go, and dive into them and think about those things in maybe a different light. I'm not saying that everybody's parents do the right thing, or that that you're going to learn that you're suddenly going to find out that your parents are wonderful people when you thought they were horrible. Maybe they are horrible. Maybe they're dicks. I'm just saying it does help to understand whatever that relationship was. It can help you understand where you are today, because when you have that influence and those inputs, those sensory inputs, and those behaviors and habits that you create when you're young, they really do stick with you. And I think it's important to understand them in order for us to understand ourselves and move forward. So that's it. So anyway, rest in peace to my mom, Sandy, who is, she really was a wonderful woman in many ways. And I loved her dearly, but, you guys that have complex relationships with your parents, I would give almost anything to have my mom back today. But I can tell you, if she were here, we would not be best friends. My mom was the type of person that I loved so dearly, but sometimes I could not even be in her presence for no reason, nothing that she had done. I just couldn't stand being in her presence. And that is that complex relationship that I know some of you have. I know you do. You get it. And maybe you've even beaten yourself up about it because you just didn't understand, why do I just not even want to be around my parents sometimes, or didn't want to be around my parents sometimes. Just know that that's not abnormal. But just, dig a little bit deep into some of those things, and maybe it will help you understand that. So anyway, that's it about my mom and how she helped me to be a responsible person. And I think that plays into today, how I have this uber sense of responsibility, and I'm not afraid to take ownership, as I did as I mentioned in this this situation where I had to apologize to somebody that I talked about in season 1, episode 15. So I think this is one of the reasons why I am so passionate about speaking out and finding your voice, because it's always been, at least since my mom's made me do it so many times. Thank you, Mom. It was easy, I think, because I had to do it so early. So I think that's where I come from. And that's why I always encourage you all to speak out, find your voice, and go after what you want. So that's it. I was kind of rambling, but that's what I do. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening and watching. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Look me up on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And always, always, always remember, you are a fucking rock star. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Take it easy.